You believe you are being held down, suppressed by forces beyond your control. Someone else's fault. The system, your boss, your parents, society. And maybe there is truth in that. But what if I told you that the very fact you feel oppressed reveals something darker about your position in the world? Something you've been refusing to see. Niccolò Machiavelli observed something brutal about human hierarchies. He noticed that the people who complained most about oppression were rarely the ones at the absolute bottom. The truly powerless don't complain. They're too busy surviving. No, the ones who felt oppressed were those who had just enough awareness to recognize their cage, but not enough power to escape it. They occupied the worst possible position, close enough to power to see it, far enough away to never touch it. Machiavelli called this poor positioning, and here is what he understood that you don't. Feeling oppressed is not evidence that you are a victim. It is evidence that you are standing in the wrong place. Let that settle for a moment. You've built an identity around your suffering. It gives you something to explain your failures with. A narrative that makes sense of why you are not where you want to be. The world is against you. People don't understand you. You never got the opportunities others had. And the moment you embrace this story, you cement yourself in place. Because victimhood is a throne. It is comfortable. It is socially acceptable. It even earns you sympathy. But it is a throne in a prison cell. Machiavelli watched as entire families lost their wealth and influence. Not because they were destroyed by enemies, but because they accepted the role of the defeated. They positioned themselves as casualties of circumstance. And circumstance obliged. The Renaissance was filled with noble houses that fell not through conquest, but through passivity disguised as honor. They believed their suffering made them righteous. It didn't. It made them irrelevant. Here is the psychological mechanism you need to understand. When you identify as oppressed, your brain begins filtering reality to confirm that belief. You notice every slight, every unfair advantage someone else receives, every door that closes in your face. And you miss every opportunity you could have taken, every move you could have made, every alliance you could have formed. This is called confirmation bias. But Machiavelli understood it 500 years before psychologists named it. He wrote that men see what they expect to see, and if you expect oppression, that is all your mind will show you. Let's be specific about what poor positioning actually means. It means you are standing in a place where forces act upon you, but you cannot act upon them. You are visible enough to be a target, but not powerful enough to be a threat. You are close enough to see what others have, but not connected enough to access it. This is the killing zone of social hierarchies. Machiavelli saw this pattern repeat in every court, every merchant guild, every military campaign. The people who survived and thrived weren't necessarily the strongest. They were the ones who understood position. They knew when to advance, when to retreat, when to make themselves indispensable, when to become invisible. The oppressed never learned this fluidity. They stood still and complained that the wind was too strong. Think about your own life right now. Where are you standing? In your career, are you positioned in a role where your work is noticed by decision makers? Or are you invisible? In your relationships, do you occupy a position of necessity or convenience? In your social circles, are you the hub or the peripheral node? Be honest. Most people who feel oppressed occupy positions of low leverage. They've placed themselves, or allowed themselves to be placed, in locations within the social architecture where they have maximum exposure to harm and minimum capacity to defend themselves. They're the middle managers everyone blames but nobody listens to. The friends everyone calls when they need something, but nobody invites to the important conversations. The employees who work hard but never get promoted because they're too valuable where they are. This is poor positioning. And the cruelest part is that it often masquerades as virtue. I am loyal, you say. What you mean is, I don't have the courage to move. I am patient, you claim. What you mean is, I am afraid to demand what I am worth. I believe in fairness, you announce. What you mean is, I've accepted my subordinate position and I am calling it morality. Machiavelli would look at you and see someone who has confused endurance with strategy. Suffering is not a virtue, it is just suffering. And if you are suffering because of where you are standing, the solution is not to stand there more nobly, it is to move. Power operates like an ecosystem. There are predators, prey, and strategic positions that determine which role you play. Machiavelli studied the Italian city-states and noticed something fascinating. The states that survived weren't always the largest or the wealthiest. They were the ones positioned at critical junctures. Venice controlled trade routes. Florence controlled banking. Milan controlled military access to the north. Their geography gave them leverage. They could make themselves necessary, and when you are necessary, oppression becomes expensive. Now translate this to your personal environment. What junctures do you control? What resources, information, or capabilities flow through you? If the answer is nothing, you are not positioned. You are just present. The people you envy, the ones who seem to glide through life while you struggle, they're not necessarily more talented. They're better positioned. They know someone who knows someone. They have a skill that is rare in their specific environment. They've made themselves difficult to replace. They've positioned themselves at the intersection of necessity and scarcity. And here is what makes you angry. They probably didn't work as hard as you. They just worked smarter about where they stood. Machiavelli observed that the hardest workers were often the least successful. Not because hard work doesn't matter, but because hard work in the wrong position is just decorated slavery. You are building someone else's empire. You are making yourself useful to a system that doesn't serve you. And then you complain about being oppressed by that system. The system isn't oppressing you. You are volunteering. Here is where it gets uncomfortable. You believe in fairness. You think that if you work hard, follow the rules, and demonstrate your value, you'll be rewarded. This belief is your prison. Machiavelli watched countless honorable men lose everything because they believed the game had rules that would protect them. It doesn't. The game has patterns, and if you understand the patterns, you can navigate them. But there are no rules guaranteeing that your virtue will be recognized. No cosmic force ensuring that your hard work pays off. No invisible hand of justice correcting imbalances. There is only position. And those who understand position will always defeat those who believe in fairness. This isn't cynicism. This is just accurate observation of how power actually distributes itself. The people at the top didn't get there by being the fairest or the most deserving. They got there by being the best positioned, and often they positioned themselves by doing things you wouldn't do, not necessarily immoral things, but uncomfortable things. They asked for what they wanted. They made connections with people they didn't particularly like because those people were useful. They left positions before they were ready because they recognized dead ends. They negotiated hard even when it felt awkward. They prioritized their advancement over their comfort. And you waited for someone to notice your worth. You expected merit to speak for itself. You confused being a good person with being an effective person. Here is the Machiavellian truth. Being good is not a strategy. Being good is a personal choice about how you want to conduct yourself. But don't confuse it with a winning strategy. The world will not reward you for being good. It will reward you for being necessary. And if you are positioned in a place where you are easily replaceable, your goodness is irrelevant. So what do? You relocate. Not physically necessarily, though sometimes that is required. But you shift your position in the social geometry around you. Machiavelli's advice to princes applies to everyone. Never fight a battle you cannot win. If you are in a position where you are constantly fighting uphill, the answer is not to fight harder. It is to change the terrain. Look at your current position. If you are in a job where your contributions go unnoticed, you have three options. 1. Make them impossible to ignore by controlling something critical. 2. Move to a different part of the organization where your skills are scarce. 3. Leave entirely for an environment that values what you offer. What you cannot do is stay where you are and hope things change. They won't. Not because people are evil, but because systems perpetuate themselves, and you've already been categorized. The same logic applies to relationships. If you are positioned as the person who is always available, always supportive, always self-sacrificing, you've positioned yourself for exploitation. Not because the other person is necessarily malicious, but because you've trained them to see you as a resource, not a priority. The solution is not to communicate better or set boundaries more clearly. The solution is to reposition. Become less available. Develop other relationships. Demonstrate that your attention is scarce and valuable. Make them work to keep you. This feels manipulative to you because you've been taught that love and friendship should be unconditional. They shouldn't require strategy. But that is a beautiful lie. Every relationship is a negotiation of position. And if you are always the one giving, you've positioned yourself as the weaker party. Machiavelli would tell you this: repositioning is not betrayal, it is survival. How do you know if you are well positioned? Machiavelli offers clear indicators. People seek your approval. Your absence creates problems. You have multiple options, not just one path. When you speak, others adjust their positions around your words. You can say no without catastrophic consequences. You are not easily replaced. Compare this to poor positioning. You seek everyone else's approval. Your absence goes unnoticed. You feel trapped because you have no alternatives. When you speak, nothing changes. You say yes because you can't afford to say no. You could be replaced tomorrow and barely anyone would notice. The brutal honesty you need right now. Most of you reading this are poorly positioned. That is not an insult, it is a diagnosis. And diagnosis is the first step toward cure. You've been standing in the wrong place, wondering why nothing works. Now you know. The question is what you are willing to do about it. Repositioning requires 3 movements. First, the audit. Map where you actually stand right now. Not where you think you stand. Not where you deserve to stand. Where you actually stand. In your workplace, who makes decisions that affect you, and do they even know your name? In your relationships, who initiates contact and who responds? In your social circles, whose opinion matters and whose gets ignored? Be clinical about this. Machiavelli succeeded because he saw reality without the comfort of delusion. You must do the same. Write it down if you need to. Create an actual map of your social architecture. Where is power concentrated? Where do resources flow? And where are you in relation to these currents? Second, the gap analysis. Identify the distance between where you are and where you need to be to stop feeling oppressed. What capabilities do you lack? What connections do you need? What knowledge would change your leverage? Be specific. I need to be more confident is not specific. I need to develop a skill in data analysis that makes me irreplaceable in my department is specific. I need better relationships is not specific. I need to build connections with 3 people who have influence in my industry is specific. Machiavelli's repositioning strategies always involved concrete steps, not vague aspirations. Third, the execution. This is where most people fail, because repositioning requires discomfort. It means having conversations you've been avoiding, asking for things you don't think you deserve, walking away from situations that feel safe, but keep you weak, making yourself scarce when you've always been available, investing in relationships that feel transactional, prioritizing your positioning over people's feelings. And here is the part that will offend you. Sometimes repositioning requires you to become temporarily less likable. You'll have to disappoint people who've come to expect your servitude. You'll have to advocate for yourself in ways that feel aggressive. You'll have to calculate your moves in ways that feel cold. This is the tax. Machiavelli understood that virtue without power is just self-satisfied weakness. If you want to stop being oppressed, you have to become willing to be perceived as difficult, as self-interested, as strategic. The people who remain popular while being poorly positioned are prisoners who've made friends with their chains. Machiavelli wrote The Prince not for tyrants, but for anyone who wanted to stop being a victim. The prince isn't a monarch. It is anyone who takes responsibility for their position in the world. You can be a prince in your own life, but it requires accepting something most people won't. That your oppression is, in large part, a choice you keep making, not consciously, not maliciously, but through 1,000 small decisions to stay where you are, to not rock the boat, to be grateful for scraps, to accept treatment you resent, to prioritize harmony over advancement. Every time you've swallowed your anger to keep the peace, you've chosen poor positioning. Every time you failed to negotiate because you didn't want to seem greedy, you've chosen poor positioning. Every time you've accepted less than you wanted because asking felt too risky, you've chosen poor positioning. And the cumulative effect of these choices is the sense of oppression you feel now. You are not being held down by some external force. You are being held down by the position you've maneuvered yourself into through years of conflict avoidance and people-pleasing. This is the hardest truth in this entire script. Your oppression is largely self-imposed. Machiavelli observed that the most powerful people weren't the strongest. They were the most necessary. Think about Venice again. A city built on swampland became an empire because it positioned itself as necessary to everyone who wanted to trade between East and West. You couldn't avoid Venice. Your wealth depended on their cooperation. So they were never truly oppressed, even by larger empires, because oppressing them was too expensive. Apply this to yourself. How do you make yourself necessary? You develop rare combinations of skills. You build relationships with multiple competing parties, so you become a bridge. You control information flow. You become the person who gets things done when others can't. But here is the key. You have to make yourself necessary to the right people. Being necessary to people who have no power doesn't help you. It just makes you a valuable slave to other slaves. You need to position yourself where you are necessary to people who can change your circumstances. This is why Machiavelli emphasized knowing the hierarchy. You can't reposition effectively if you don't understand the structure you are moving within. Who has power? What do they need? How can you become someone they cannot afford to lose? These are not comfortable questions for people who believe in fairness, but they are the questions that determine whether you remain oppressed. Repositioning is not instant. Machiavelli planned in years, sometimes decades. He understood that position is built through accumulated small advantages. A favor here, a skill there, a connection made, a reputation carefully constructed. You are thinking in days and weeks. I've been trying for 6 months and nothing has changed. 6 months is nothing. A 6-month effort at repositioning is barely enough to be noticed. Real positional change takes years of sustained, strategic action. But here is what makes it worthwhile: compound effects. The person who repositions themselves slightly better every year for 5 years will be unrecognizable. They'll be in a completely different social stratum. They'll have leverage you can't currently imagine. They'll have stopped feeling oppressed because they'll have positioned themselves beyond oppression. Compare that to 5 years of complaining about your oppression while staying in the same place. Same job, same relationships, same powerless position. Just 5 years older and more bitter. Machiavelli would look at these two paths and tell you the choice is obvious. But most people won't choose the harder path. They'll choose the comfortable path of victimhood, and they'll spend their lives wondering why nothing ever changes. So here we are. You've been feeling oppressed, and maybe you had every right to feel that way. Maybe people have treated you unfairly. Maybe you've been disadvantaged. Maybe the system is rigged against people like you. All of that can be true, and it is still irrelevant to what happens next, because Machiavelli's observation remains accurate 500 years later. If you feel oppressed, you are poorly positioned. And poor positioning is fixable. Not easily, not quickly, not without sacrifice. But it is fixable. You can move. You can develop new capabilities. You can build new connections. You can make yourself valuable in ways you are not currently valuable. You can position yourself strategically instead of waiting for justice to position you fairly. Or you can stay where you are. Keep feeling oppressed. Keep explaining to yourself and others why it is not your fault. Keep waiting for the world to recognize your worth and correct the imbalance. It won't. The world has never worked that way. Machiavelli understood this in the 1500s. And nothing has changed. The names are different. The technology is different. But the fundamental dynamics of power and position remain exactly the same. Those who understand positioning thrive. Those who don't complain about being oppressed, you have a choice to make. Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, now. Are you going to reposition yourself, or are you going to spend another year, another 5 years, another decade, standing in the same killing zone, wondering why you keep getting hit? Machiavelli would tell you that the answer to this question will determine everything about your life. Your wealth, your relationships, your sense of agency, your freedom. All of it comes down to where you are standing. So I leave you with his question, the one he asked every prince who came to him seeking advice. Where are you standing? And more importantly, why are you still there?